Leo, listen closely because something is coming this November that may just knock you off your seat. Not from fear, not from drama, but because it will hit too close to the part of you that's been quietly waiting to feel alive again. If you're here, I'm going to be honest with you. It's probably not by accident. You didn't just click into a random horoscope video. Something pulled you in, whether it was a whisper in your chest, a strange stillness in your routine, or the kind of tension that feels like the air right before a storm. That's what we're talking about today. You see, this isn't your usual astrology reading. I'm not here to give you vague predictions or tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to help you recognize the moment when the universe calls you by name. And Leo, this is that moment. Let me ask you this, have you felt it lately? That tight pull in your stomach, or the random heartbeat spike that made you pause for no reason? Have you looked around and felt like something's about to shift, even though nothing has changed yet? Yeah. That's not your imagination. That's a soul-level signal. And it's not meant to scare you, it's meant to prepare you. This video is a call to that part of you that's ready for truth, even if it shakes things up. You've carried yourself with strength for so long. You've held things together when no one noticed. You've made peace with disappointment, learned to expect less just to avoid the sting. But something new is coming. A message. A sign. A moment that might arrive through a phone call, a sentence, a sudden clarity, whatever it looks like, it will hit your core. Because you weren't meant to stay stuck in survival mode. You weren't meant to just get by. And I get it, trusting again after you've been let down isn't easy. Hope can feel like a risk. But Leo, this isn't about blind faith. This is about recognizing that your soul is trying to bring you back to yourself. That November may very well deliver the kind of wake-up call you can't ignore. One that reminds you you've always been more than your struggles. I want you to take a moment right now and ask yourself, what part of me has been waiting to feel again? What have I been quietly hoping for, even if I stopped saying it out loud? Leave a comment below to confirm it. It doesn't have to be long, just something real. Because writing it down is your way of saying to the universe, I'm listening. I'm ready. And before we dive deeper, let me pause to say something that I don't take lightly. Thank you. Truly. Thank you for showing up here today, for trusting your intuition, for letting this message reach you. Every like, every comment, every share, every time you subscribe. It draws you deeper into this space we're building together, this sanctuary we call eternal mindfulness. You may not realize it, but your presence here ripples out into the world in ways far beyond the screen. So stay with me. Because what's coming next in this reading might not just shift your perspective, it might shift your path. And trust me, Leo, you'll want to be here for that. Now, tell me, what brought you here today? What called you in? Let's begin. Leo, by now, you may already feel it, not in the obvious sense, not through logic, but as a subtle but undeniable shift in your inner atmosphere. Something inside you is stirring. It might show up as restlessness in your chest, a quickening in your breath, or even a strange urge to pause and look out the window for no reason at all. That's not anxiety. That's your soul registering movement. Because whether you're fully aware of it or not, you're standing before a door that's about to open, not one you knock on, but one that opens the moment your energy aligns. In astrology, November is a powerful turning point for you. The trine between the Sun and Pluto is stirring your subconscious ocean. Think of it like a beam of light descending deep into the waters of your inner world, illuminating what was buried, ignored, or misunderstood. Pluto doesn't do surface work. It doesn't come gently. But in a harmonious aspect like this, it doesn't come to destroy, it comes to reveal. You're not being torn down. You're being asked to rise up. The timing of this aspect feels like a cosmic spotlight shining directly on the version of yourself you were always meant to become but have, for various reasons, been avoiding or postponing. This is why the feeling inside you might be unfamiliar. It's not fear. It's anticipation. The kind that builds when something real is coming your way. You see, every soul knows its timing. And yours? It's been whispering beneath the noise, waiting for the right vibration to wake you up from autopilot. When I pull the cards for Leo during this cycle, the High Priestess and Judgment almost always come forward. And this doesn't surprise me. These are cards of inner knowing and divine reckoning. The High Priestess reminds you that you've known this moment was coming, you just didn't have the language for it yet. The signs were there in your dreams, in the quiet discomfort you kept brushing off, in those repeated synchronicities you thought were just coincidence. And Judgment? That card isn't about punishment. It's about liberation. It's about answering a call that only your soul can hear, and finally saying, yes. I'm ready. From a self-help perspective, this kind of energy often gets misread. People think something is wrong with them when their routines suddenly stop feeling right. But that sense of disconnection isn't dysfunction, it's an invitation. Your body, your habits, your old ways of coping theory all getting recalibrated to match what you're becoming. And yes, that may feel disorienting. Change always does. Especially when it's the kind you didn't chase, but the kind that found you because you were finally still enough to receive it. That's how the law of attraction truly works. Not through force. Not through begging the universe to give you what you think you want. But by allowing your energy to become the kind that naturally attracts the life you're meant to live. Your heart, Leo, is a transmitter. It picks up on frequencies long before your mind understands them. If something feels off lately, it's because your internal compass is adjusting to a new magnetic north. So I want to ask you something just between you and this moment. Have you felt that strange beat in your chest lately? That low hum of, something's coming? You don't have to name it. Just acknowledge it. And if that resonates, leave a comment below. Write the first word or feeling that comes to mind. That one simple act can be a spiritual handshake between your conscious self and the part of you that already knows the way. Because this isn't just about astrology or a set of predictions. This is about the unfolding of something that's been waiting for you patiently, silently until you were finally still enough to hear the knock. And it's here now. All you have to do is listen. Leo, when something real is about to arrive, your body usually knows before your mind catches up. You don't always get a clear sign. Sometimes, it's a strange unease in your stomach. Other times, it's that jolt of electricity that hits when your name is called but no one's around. It's not fear. It's not nerves. It's your system bracing for a truth that's been circling around you for a while, waiting for a moment when you finally stop long enough to let it land. This month, November doesn't just pass through your chart, it knocks. Loud enough to wake you. Gentle enough to guide you. The number 11 in numerology is often described as a portal, a master vibration. And there's a reason you're feeling all this intensity right now. This isn't just another month. It's a spiritual threshold. A vibrational gateway between where you've been and where you're meant to go next. And what meets you at that door won't always be comfortable. But it will be honest. Astrologically, the timing couldn't be more exact. Combined with the Pluto aspects from earlier, this November brings with it flashes of insight that you can't unsee. You may notice your tolerance for anything fake, stagnant, or misaligned is dropping fast. That's not you being impatient. That's clarity beginning to pierce through. And in tarot, this clarity is echoed by two cards I keep seeing for you, the Tower and the Ace of Swords. Now I know the Tower tends to scare people. It looks like chaos. But its job isn't to destroy you, it's to destroy the illusions that keep you small. It comes to rip the blindfold off, not as punishment, but as mercy. Because you've been surviving on default for too long, and the universe is done watching you sleepwalk through your own life. That's why this call, coming to you, whether it's a literal phone call, a conversation that leaves you speechless, or a realization that erupts in the middle of your day, it won't let you go back to pretending anymore. And then there's the Ace of Swords, pure truth. Sharp. Direct. Life-changing. When this card arrives, it usually signals a breakthrough that's been a long time coming. You'll know it when it hits. Your posture shifts. Your chest opens. Your silence feels different, less like hiding, more like listening. That's when you realize, you're no longer waiting for a miracle to come save you. You're hearing the call to rise and meet it halfway. You've probably heard the phrase, wake-up call, used casually. But in energetic work, it's more than that. It's a soul impulse. A trigger that shakes you out of the patterns you've repeated just because they were familiar. And this is the moment you're stepping into now. You're being invited, not forced, but invited to move forward in a way that actually honors who you've become, not who you used to be. So let me ask you, honestly, if someone called your name tomorrow, not out of habit, but because they saw something in you, an opportunity, a destiny, a path, would you answer? Or would you hesitate because you've been burned before? This is the threshold. That's the line in the sand. And the only thing you're being asked to do is choose. Let go of the reflexes that once protected you but no longer serve you. Let go of the roles you had to play just to feel safe. Let go of the dull ache of almost. You're not meant to repeat. You're meant to awaken. And if you've felt like something's been trying to get your attention lately, believe it. That's not your imagination. That's alignment knocking. If even a part of this message lands in your heart, share it in the comments. Write down what you're hearing, feeling, or even resisting. That one moment of honesty might just be the key that unlocks what's next. Leo, you didn't just survive what you went through, you became the quiet keeper of light in places where others couldn't see their way out. And maybe you never said it out loud, but you felt it. You've walked into rooms where the energy was heavy, where no one spoke the truth, and somehow, you still stayed. You made people feel safe without them even knowing why. That's not coincidence. That's who you are. And deep down, you've always known it. Even if no one gave you the title, even if no one ever said, thank you. You see, in astrology, Leo is ruled by the sun, the only celestial body that shines without needing to reflect anything. That's not just poetic. That's real energy. It means you were born to light up the spaces around you, not through performance or effort, but simply by being fully present as yourself. But let's be honest, sometimes that role is lonely. Sometimes you've given so much light that you forgot to keep some for yourself. Sometimes people leaned on you so hard, they forgot you were human, too. And yet you stayed. You smiled through days when your heart was too tired to beat loudly. You encouraged others while your own confidence was barely hanging on. You offered warmth while wondering if anyone would ever offer it back. These aren't small things. These are sacred acts, done in silence, done in the dark. And whether or not you realize it, the universe noticed. In the language of energy, nothing is lost. The love you gave? Still circling. The support you offered when you had nothing left? Still echoing. Your light might have flickered, but it never went out. And now you're being reminded of your role not as someone who just endured, but as someone who can open a door for others because you remember how heavy it felt when yours was closed. This is where the Hermit and the Star come in. These two tarot archetypes together tell a very personal story. The Hermit is the one who's walked the hard road alone, not to isolate but to understand. He holds a lantern not to find his own way anymore, but to guide others. The Star follows right after the Tower in tarot for a reason. She appears when hope is needed most. When all the false structures have fallen. Together, these two cards say, your experience matters. Your scars are signals. Your presence is light. That's why your energy right now, just your existence, not your wordsys already sending ripples to someone else who needs it. According to the law of attraction, the frequency you carry doesn't just pull things toward you. It becomes a beacon. It becomes a lifeline. That's what you are, even when no one sees it. Especially then. So let me ask you something a little deeper. Have you ever helped someone through something without them even knowing? Maybe a quiet gesture, maybe just showing up, maybe just listening when you had no answers to give. That wasn't accidental. That was you standing at a doorway, holding it open for someone else. And if you've done that even once, you're not just surviving. You're fulfilling a purpose most people never even realize they're capable of. If that speaks to you, share it in the comments. Tell me if you've ever held space for someone in the dark. It doesn't have to be long. Just real. Because writing it down, even anonymously, is like lighting a candle that someone else might see when they're trying to find their way back home. And maybe that someone was once you. Leo, there's a certain kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much but from holding yourself back for too long. From dimming your lights so others wouldn't feel small. From softening your voice so no one would accuse you of being too much. You know what I mean. There were moments when you wanted to shine, to speak up, to love openly, but instead you paused, edited yourself, folded your edges to fit. And maybe people praised you for being considerate. But deep inside, you knew you were shrinking. This month, the energy shifts. Venus moves into your 5th house, your home territory. This is the area of joy, romance, creative fire, and unapologetic self-expression. It's like the universe is handing you back the keys to a room in your soul you locked up long ago. And maybe you don't know exactly what to do with that room yet. That's okay. The first step isn't to renovate it, it's just to walk back in. Light a candle. Open a window. Remind yourself what it feels like to take up space and not apologize for it. If you've ever felt like your fire was smothered under layers of expectation, pressure, or fear, this is your season to breathe life back into that flame. Because here's the truth, the flame was never gone. It was just buried under the ashes of old roles, outdated identities, and survival mode choices. But embers don't die easily. And Leo, your fire burns with purpose. You were never meant to live a life where you only exist for others. You were meant to live a life where your light becomes an invitation for others to rise too. One way to amplify this light is through the energy around you: colors, foods, habits. Simple shifts make a difference. Gold, copper orange, and bold reds aren't just vibrant, they carry frequencies that mirror your essence. Wearing them, even subtly, aligns you with warmth, courage, and vitality. Nourish your body with zinc-rich foods, hydrate deeply, and don't underestimate the power of a morning breathwork or a 5-minute meditation. Not because those things fix everything, but because they remind your nervous system what peace and clarity actually feel like. If work feels heavy or uninspiring lately, that's not failure, it's a nudge. The boredom you're sensing might be your intuition whispering, "You've outgrown this." This doesn't mean you have to quit everything overnight. It means you get to question what part of your life needs more fire, more play, more you. Same goes for love. You don't need a reason to open your heart again. You don't need a perfect person or a guarantee. You just need to trust that feeling joy is not selfish. It's sacred. Let yourself feel it again, not because you're lonely, but because you're alive. You've always had a beautiful way of loving people fully, even when you weren't fully loved in return. That's strength. That's light. And it's time that love comes full circle. Let it begin with you. This month isn't about fixing yourself, it's about reclaiming the parts of you that were never broken in the first place. And maybe, just maybe, we spent years trying to adapt to a world that didn't know how to hold someone like you. But what if November is the month you stop shrinking to fit? What if this time, you let the world learn to adjust to your glow? If that resonates even a little, write it down in the comments. Let it be a declaration, a release, a promise to yourself. You don't have to wait for permission anymore. The moment you choose to return to your own light, you've already begun. Not everyone hears the call. But you did. And that alone already says something powerful about the kind of soul you are. It means you're awake, maybe still figuring things out, maybe still healing, but awake enough to notice when something beyond routine is whispering to you. And this month, Leo, that whisper is turning into a voice. You don't need to overthink it. You just need to feel it. You've been through enough cycles to recognize when a chapter is closing, not because things fall apart, but because you outgrow them. And that's exactly what this moment is. A spiritual exhale. A pause between who you were and who you're becoming. In astrology, that's often marked by transits that complete a loop, bringing you back to yourself, but with deeper roots, wider vision, and a clearer voice. The World card reflects this beautifully. It doesn't just mean ending. It means completion. Wholeness. A season of your life has taught you what it needed to teach. You don't have to carry its weight anymore. Right alongside the world is the King of Wands card, Leo. It doesn't arrive as a reminder to fight harder. It comes as a reminder to lead from your core truth. No more posturing. No more roles. No more pretending you're fine when you're quietly unraveling. This is where you begin again, not as a beginner, but as someone who has earned the right to take up space with wisdom, not just passion. If you've been wondering why you felt disconnected or uncertain even when everything seems fine, it's likely because your soul has been calling out for something deeper. Something real. The thing is, we often imagine big shifts as loud, dramatic events. But in my experience personally and with clients, the most life-changing moments are quiet. They come in the form of stillness. A phrase that hits different. A choice that feels scarier than staying stuck. A memory that returns, not to haunt you, but to remind you what you're capable of. This month, the call might come through a conversation, a dream, a decision that feels too important to ignore. You'll recognize it not because it makes sense, but because it wakes something ancient inside you. A resonance. A thump in your chest that doesn't feel like anxiety, it feels like truth. I want to ask you something gently but honestly. What's the first thing that comes to your heart when I say the words, divine calling? Don't edit it. Don't judge it. Just notice it. That might be your doorway. That might be the knock you've been waiting for. If it came to you just now, I invite you to write it down in the comments. Sometimes, clarity begins with naming what we feel. And your voice matters not just here, but in the world you're building. You're not at a random checkpoint in your life. This is a soul-marked milepost. You've crossed things off, said your goodbyes, questioned your direction, and now, something new is leaning in. You're being asked to not just hear the call, but answer it. Not just dream about change, but embody it. And no, it doesn't require perfection. It only asks for presence. For willingness. For honesty. So if something inside you is whispering, I think I'm ready, trust it. You don't need permission to become who you were meant to be. You just need a moment of courage. And if you're looking for a sign, this is it. If this reading spoke to something real in you, leave a comment. I've heard my calling. That single sentence might be the anchor your future self will look back on. And if this message stirred something you know someone else needs to hear, share it. Because maybe, just maybe, the light you carry is the very signal someone else is waiting for. Leo, if you've stayed with me until now, I want you to know this: your presence here means more than you think. You didn't stumble upon this video. Something within you was already reaching for this message long before you pressed play. And now, here we are at the edge of a new beginning. You're not just someone waiting for signs. You are the sign someone else may have been waiting for. You're not just holding on, you're holding light. The kind of light that doesn't burn out in the dark. The kind that finds a way, even when the path is unclear. Whatever November brings you, know this: you won't fall because of pain. You'll fall out of your seat because a truth you've long suspected finally stands right in front of you. Not to scare you, but to free you. To remind you that destiny hasn't forgotten your name. It's been calling it quietly, patiently, again and again. And now, you're ready to answer. There is no need to rush. You don't need a 10-step plan tonight. But you do need to listen when your heart beats a little faster at something you can't quite explain. You do need to pause when a phrase in this video strikes deeper than expected. And you do need to trust that if you're feeling something stirring, not imagining it, you're awakening. So let me ask you, what would shift if you chose to believe that you were never behind? That every closed door, every quiet night, every delayed answer was leading you here not to break you, but to prepare you? You are not here to live out someone else's story. You're here to write your own bravely, brilliantly, and with a voice that remembers how to rise even after silence. And if your chest tightens at the idea of that, maybe it's not fear. Maybe it's power finally waking up in you. Take a breath and let yourself feel that. Because this month, you're not just receiving guidance. You're stepping into alignment. And that begins not with doing more but with finally letting yourself be who you truly are. If anything in this message touched something real inside you, I invite you to write, "I'm ready," in the comments. Let that be your energetic yes. Not from a but for you. Because sometimes, declaring your readiness is what opens the next door. And if you felt this message, share it with someone you care about. You never know who needs the exact reminder you just received. Thank you, truly, for being here. Every like, every comment, every subscription brings you closer to this community of light we're building together on eternal mindfulness. And trust me, Leo, this is just the beginning. Now, tell me, what part of you has finally come home after hearing this?